You might be surprised to hear that a member of the News Center Maine team has just co-written a children's book. The new author is meteorologist Todd Gutner.
How does someone who gets up at 2 in the morning have the time or energy to do anything, much less write a book? Well, it turns out this was a collaborative effort that involved Todd, his wife, and a couple of friends. And the book they created for children was inspired by a real-life adventure that happened to them right here in Maine. We got together with the whole gang at a marina in South Portland that is part of the story, on the boat that is at the heart of the story.
All of us have real-life adventures, and then we don't write a book. So who had the idea? Who said, you know, we ought to write a book, or someone of this group ought to write a book?
No?
No.
I don't think it was my idea.
No.
Really?
We're 2 seconds into the conversation, and we already have a disagreement.
This is like real life, Rob.
I'm glad we have a fact check.
This is what I remember. Samir and I were, it was shortly after it happened, and Samir and I were at like a barbecue or some mutual social function, and we were just kind of talking about the craziness of it. And I was like, it's like such a children's book, like The Adventures of Peanut.
All right, that's her version. What's your version?
I'm not going to disagree with Rachel, but there was a number of individuals who were like, that's a children's book. You should write a children's book. And I was like, I don't really have time to write a children's book. But somehow we found time to write a children's book.
The book is called The Adventures of a Maine Peanut. This boat, the oddly named Peanut, was at the center of the actual events that led to this fictionalized story. All right, there was a real-life incident that inspired this story, and it begins with a tradition. What is the tradition, Samir?
The tradition is every Father's Day, a group of guys and our daughters now go out to Richmond Island and spend Father's Day or the day before or part of Father's Day weekend on the island having fun.
In 2023, about a dozen fathers and daughters went out to Richmond Island and had a great time. But a storm was coming in, and Todd warned the group the weather was going to get fairly nasty. The next morning, with the wind and waves picking up, Todd and Samir Haydar and their daughters started heading back to the mainland in Samir's boat, Peanut. So, if I can condense the story, you decided that it wasn't a great idea to try to make it back here to Centerboard Yacht Club, and instead you went to Kettle Cove in Cape Elizabeth, tied up there at a mooring. And who was responsible for tying the line?
Again, we're not talking about certain things, right?
Right.
Oh, yes, we are.
It was a collaborative effort, but only one person's hands were on the knot.
And what was that person's name?
His name was Todd.
And Rob, I can tell you that before you came, just a few minutes ago, they were trying to tie a bowline, and neither one of them could tie a bowline, which is allegedly what they secured to the mooring.
Todd tied the knot, and everyone on board went ashore thinking Peanut was securely moored. But the knot didn't hold, and Peanut drifted away out of Kettle Cove into the open Atlantic. And then what happens to the boat for the next extended period of time?
96 hours it was missing.
Who was counting, though, right?
Yeah.
This guy was a mess.
It was traumatic for me.
1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days went by with no sign of the boat, no sign of anything that was stowed on board.
You would think that there'd be some remnants of the boat.
If it ended up on rocks or something, you know.
So every morning I would go out on Kettle Cove and run up and down looking for a flip-flop or something that had to do with the boat. And we never found it.
You went up in a plane.
Went up in a plane.
Looking for Peanut.
Yeah, there was no Peanut.
4 days later, Peanut turned up completely undamaged, well down the coast in a gunkwit. All of which, when it came to an end, made you say, this would be a pretty good children's book.
Exactly. It's kind of incredible. Yeah. And with a name like Peanut, it's like, it's meant to be.
Who did most of the writing? What was the division of labor there?
I like to say that Todd wrote the book because he tied the knot that if he had tied in a proper knot, the story would not have existed.
So you're welcome.
Right. But I put the words to the story.
Jim, you did the illustrations, almost all of them except for 2, which Samir's daughter did.
Yeah.
How did you want to try to bring the story alive through the art?
Initially, just kind of drawing the events as Samir had described them.
If I were publishing this book, I would put your name on the title page in 4-inch high letters. But you guys very modestly didn't even use names. I forget exactly what the credits are, but I think written by a weatherman and a physician, edited by a teacher, illustrated by a grandfather.
Yeah.
So why did you do that?
It just was cute. First of all, I don't think a 6 or 7-year-old knows who I am or you are. So, you know, I don't think it's gonna matter. But yeah, I think it's just, it kind of speaks to the story a little bit. And, you know, it's more about Peanut and what happened out there and you know, the adventure that we think Peanut was on.
If the book sells reasonably well, might you do another one?
I'd have to tie another crappy knot, Rob.
Exactly. We need
Good stuff. You know, and all I can think now is that when they do this Father's Day escapade out to the islands now, they should have a knot tying competition and see who's the best.
Or just leave Todd back on land. They got options.
Yeah.
Again, the name of the book is The Adventures of a Maine Peanut.
Great stuff.